Great. And if Ashley, if you don't mind, would you call the roll?
Sure. Chair Tom Farrell.
Here.
Brooke Brown.
Here.
Wallace Greener.
Here.
Ronald Hasso.
Here.
Meredith Knight.
I'm back.
There we go, Meredith.
And David Smith.
Here.
We also have City Administrator Amber Lewis here and Sean Garrettson with Pegasus.
Hello, and thank y'all for being here. Let's see, next item we have is public comments. If we have any public comments, just raise your hand and I will, and Ashley, if you would let everybody know how to raise their hand, that would be helpful, I think.
Sure, it doesn't look like we have anybody calling in right now. If you're on a phone or computer, towards the bottom of your screen, there should either be 3 dots for some more options and then the option to raise your hand. And I think if you're on a computer, it's just right at the bottom of your screen.
Right.
At this time, we do not have any hands raised.
I didn't see any either. Item number 2, I'd like to table the item number 2, discussion possible action on the minutes of the August 9th meeting. Frankly, I have not had a chance to look at those very carefully. So if without objection, we'll just table those and move on with that. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action to review approved elements of the comprehensive plan. Sean, I believe you have sent us, well, first of all, let me back up a bit and say, we did not get back our, from Bowie, we have 3 chapters that they're working on, and there was a little miscommunication, and we will not have them back today. So we'll try to go through what we do have and make this maybe a short meeting, but we'll try to go through and get what we have done. So Sean, if you'll go ahead and start with the future land use, and we'll start with that and then go on from there.
Sure. Tom, before I get into that, I also just wanted to give an update on the community profile chapter that we were also editing. Kathy told me today she'll probably be finishing that up this evening with the updated demographic data. So we'll do an edit and review of that tomorrow and get that off to you in the city probably tomorrow afternoon.
Let me ask in regarding that, did we receive the census data, Amber? Or are we still waiting on that?
I don't think the new data is out yet that we could see, we could find.
I know the day that, Sean, the day you finish with that is the day we'll get it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we did look into that, and for Rollingwood, the detailed data is not going to be available to what they're saying, I think is like late September, October, but that could definitely be January. So we updated it with the 2019 data.
That's okay. I'd almost, I know that the day after you send that to us is the day we'll get it.
Right, exactly. So I sent you 2 chapters. I sent you the future land use chapter, and then the mobility chapter we had discussed in the last meeting to just kind of put bullets in there for now.
Right.
And, before the meeting, I also realized in the draft infrastructure chapter, there were also some transportation related bullets, specifically about Bee Cave Road, MOPAC as toll road and, watching that, et cetera. So I don't know, that's a discussion at least on the mobility chapter, if you want to bring those bullet points in from the infrastructure into this section, or if you really just want to leave mobility more as non-vehicular mobility.
So I think since we're talking about trying to have an interconnect between this is just my opinion, an interconnect between our residential area and our commercial area, and perhaps even having a separate commercial bridge that goes over Dry Creek that would enable us to tie in. it would seem to me when I looked at this that we would have a separate chapter on the mobility and connectivity. That would be my opinion, but I'm open to hearing everybody else's opinion on that. So that's, I think, Sean, just from my standpoint, the mobility and how do we connect it to the, how we connect our residential and commercial area is so important. I think it warrants a separate chapter in itself, myself, a separate issue on that. So, you know, because that's going to be that is our survey results that we got. There were, it was fairly telling as to how many people actually wanted to be able to connect to the commercial district from a standpoint of something other than cars to get there, but wanted to be able to have a connectivity to it. So I don't know if you read that or not in the last deal, but that kind of stood out to me on that. So let's just take that right now. We'll just start off as a separate section, and then we'll kind of go from there. If we have, if we get some other thoughts on that, we'll be glad to send them to you on that and see what we think. But I think right now, I think we look at them as a separate chapter on that.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. And let me jump in on the future land use. So again, so for those of you who might not have been in the last meeting, so now we're kind of getting into the chapters that are creating policies for the city. So like the current land use chapter, that was really just an analysis of your current land use. There was no policies in that. The parks and recreation, mobility, the infrastructure chapters and the future land use chapters are all policy chapters. And so, you know, a lot of any code amendments, for example, or capital improvement plans or budgets, and Amber can speak to this too. That should now all be referring back to all the policies that we're going to be putting in here. And so I basically took all the elements that you guys have been talking about and working on, the memo from Brooke, for example, and Tom, you had sent me a couple of other things, and put that all in here and took out some of the first person and tried to draft it as policies. And it's a pretty lengthy, I think it's like 6 pages, excuse me, 3 pages. I think if you guys have that in front of you and have any comments, maybe we can just kind of go, you know, policy by policy. So for example, in the first section of it is general policies. And that one is tree and tree canopy protection, as well as signage. Is any comments on that before we kind of move on to the next section of it?
Now, let me I think the tree and tree canopy protection was fairly consistent throughout everything that I've heard, read, and feedback I've gotten from our citizens. The signage deal is, there are some conflicting deal we have on it. To me, we need to update that current signage deal. There's no question about that, because a lot of the terminology we use is on technology that is no longer being used for signage. Remember last meeting we had, to those that weren't here, Carrie was talking about many of the things that we have in our sign ordinance that are no longer applicable because nobody uses them anymore. So we need to update that for sure. You know, we don't want the size of the signs, I think, are something that, and Meredith, this is kind of up your alley too, is, you know, our sign sizes are probably bigger than Westlake Hills. And I'm not sure about that, but I think they are. But that's very important to our businesses to have proper signage on that. And so I think it just needs to, right now, we need to we need to update that and revise it. I agree totally with that. I don't have a recommendation on the sign on what we would revise and update on that.
So Tom, I can tell you absolutely. In fact, we were just redoing all our language in our leases because it's all, you know, referencing halogen bulbs and everything's LED now, and you can control light bleed and all that stuff. So that size, you know, can stay the same, but yeah, you're right. The technology is all different.
Yeah, and I think that and Sean, guide me a little bit on this. If we are going back and saying revise and update the current sign ordinance, do we need to put some any more detail than what we're having in there right now into that?
What I would recommend is any guidance you think that would be helpful for either the city council or city staff or consultant, whoever is going to be doing that. If you feel like you have that right now.
We had a few.
Otherwise, I think it's good enough. What's that?
We did have a few comments, and that is that we do want to building signs, or Kerry had probably the best. And frankly, I'll look at the minutes. I have not looked at the minutes from last meeting, but I thought Kerry went through a fairly detailed analysis of what the issues were with signs that we have in our current ordinance versus what is being allowed by variance or by the city council. So I think that I'd have to go back and look at my notes on that, Sean, but I'll try to do that and provide the guidance that we got. And if
I'm hearing a lot of background music or background noise. I don't know if anybody else is.
From me?
I'm not sure. Did anybody else hear that? Or is just that just on my end? Okay.
Sorry. I think it's pretty quiet here, but I don't know. Anyway, but that's I'll get back with you on that and see. And if anybody has any comments, if you'll send them to Ashley, she'll forward them to everybody and we can get those to Sean to complete that section on that.
Okay.
Sorry, Sean. If you'll start with the, if you want to go through continue with the policies related to residential.
Sure. And so then it's just broken up into policies related to residential and policies related to Bee Cave Road and commercial. And, you know, in the residential, there are 8 policies there. Do you want me to go one by one, or?
Yeah, let's at least start on the ones. I didn't get any input from our task force in regard to the impervious cover fee. I kind of picked a number on that, John. So I do want to get on that first one at least, I want to go ahead and get the input from our committee. We don't charge right now. We do a couple things. You have, if you're building a house in a residential area, you have you have to follow our guidelines on our drainage criteria manual, but you have you can buy into a regional system if you're in an area where that could be. And I believe we have probably, if I remember correctly, 400,000 in that buy-in fee area. Does that sound about right, Amber?
400,000 in the buy-in fee area for, I'm sorry, Tom, what were you referring to?
Well, if there are places that if I wanted to go into a regional drainage, if I'm building a new house and I wanted to go in a regional deal, I could buy into a regional.
Oh, sure. Yes, you could. We've got 88,000.
88,000. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
No, I was hoping we had 400.
But we have spent, we may have collected maybe around 250, and we've done some little drainage improvement projects here and there.
All right. Not as much as I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
88,000 and 40,000 what?
It's $88,000 in our drainage fund. They are to do drainage facilities in certain regions. And so people can either opt into this residential stormwater discharge permit program, or they can do what they have been doing, which is constructing drainage facilities on their own property and handling the drainage there. And some of the properties, it makes sense to just put the water in the street rather than to detain it on their properties. And so that was what this program was for.
So
and how do other residents get notice of whether or not a neighbor or someone else might be putting that water in the street?
They receive notice through the building permit application and all of their drainage plans, including the RSCP. If they go that option, it is in their plans.
So do building permits get notice to, who gets notice of building permits other than the applicant?
I believe it's all neighbors within 250 feet. And
correct.
then it's 18 days before the building permit is issued.
Isn't that only if they're seeking a variance?
No.
Or it's
No.
any building permit, all neighbors get a notice?
And Brooke, and also demolition permits.
Okay, and those are the neighbors within 250 feet.
That's correct.
Okay, so neighbors that are impacted downstream but not within 250 feet wouldn't get notice if a house is being built that's just going to put the drainage in the street.
Well, you don't have most houses, if correct me, Amber, if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, Brooke, you don't have the most houses in Rollingwood would not have that option. You have
Right.
to be in a certain area where there's going to be a regional type of drainage facility for you to fit in that. I think there's actually very few.
Correct. There were very few issued, and the facility still has to meet the requirements of the drainage criteria manual. So it's the city doing the improvements with the fees paid into that fund, but it helps, regional homes in that area, but it still has to meet the DCM.
Okay, well, where do you find out where these areas are?
I think we might have a map of the ones that we've done on the city's website.
I can tell you that, Brooke, most of them are going to be along Dry Creek.
Okay.
I think that's where you're going to find them, but we can get that information. Amber, if you could get that to us, I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Happy to.
This has certain little implications there. One, I'm suggesting that we put this is in addition to everything we do today. We put a fee of $5 to $7 per square foot of impervious cover, not building area. That we would have on that. This was just a suggestion that I had. This didn't come from anywhere except we got to pay for drainage, and drainage was a main criteria, a main issue that was in the survey. So I thought this would be a way for the city to get reimbursed for some of the drainage issues that come about. Still doesn't relieve that builder of any other obligation that they have to do.
Tom?
So, yes, sir.
Tom, is there some reason that you don't have an impervious cover regulation for residential? Because that's part of your problem, because people are putting roofs on that give a concentrated flow down a downspout. And that concentrated flow is no longer mass flow or normal flow. It concentrates it, and if you don't have any area that is open to drainage, you're covering the lots as much as you can. That seems like almost self-defeating.
There is this is a long-term discussion, Wally, that we've had on that. And the counter has always been, we have large setbacks on our residential lots, and that reduces the size that you're going to have on impervious cover on that you're going to come up with on that anyway. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I've battled this for 40 years now, 30 some odd years. I don't see a change occurring on that, but I do think that what I'm suggesting on this is, if you pay for that, and then that gives the city enough money to address some of the drainage areas that we have to, that we would be draining on that. And what you're saying is fix it before we have to pay the money. I understand that, and I think it makes perfectly good sense, and I agree with you. But you know, I felt like Custer sometime with that issue. So it's not a good feeling to be Custer, I'll tell you that. So it's not something I see us changing, but I think the fee probably is a possibility to get done on that. That makes sense.
Tom, my only problem I've had was just that one time in the last year where they were working on a house and they created a channeled flow of their flow, and they didn't attempt to spread it back across the width of their property, and it brought down a bunch of mud and such into my parking lot, right where my dumpster is, which made it difficult to, my people that use the dumpster were trudging through this mud. And of course, then that gets spread all over the site, the walkways and everything. So yeah, it seemed to me that either something that said, if you're going to have concentrated flow, you must come up with some method of spreading it back in to sheet flow. And that seems to be being ignored. And that is one alternative to getting it away from a stream.
Yeah, our current ordinance, Wally, does should prevent that from happening. They're not allowed to have that kind of runoff that comes off of that property on that without detaining it. I mean, it may happen during construction. I can't tell you it didn't, because obviously it did, but it's not something that per the ordinances in place that should happen. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
So, I mean, you know, we both live long enough to know things happen. And
that's right.
It doesn't have to be right or wrong, but they do happen on that.
Yes.
So the Brooke, and I didn't mean to interrupt you on that, but the issue that I was trying to look at on this is, in addition to everything else we have, this would be a fee that would go into a drainage fee to help pay for drainage issues in Rollingwood.
And it would apply only to new construction or to everyone, or I just haven't heard this concept before.
No, right now, it would only, the way I'm suggesting, it would only apply to new construction. Because I mean,
I was just going to mention that, yeah, I think we should clarify that it's just for new construction. So current residents don't worry that they're going to get hit with a big fee.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about trying to do that, Ron, but you're right. No, this would only be on new construction.
Can I clarify, would that be new construction or major remodel, or just new construction only?
Well, the way our building construction, our ordinance works is they base it on the square footage. So if you add square footage to your lot, or new construction is the way I would suggest we do it. Like if you bought a house that had 2,500 square feet and you made it into a 6,000 square foot house, you'd have to pay the fee on it. The whole purpose is to get in my mind, the reason I suggest this is drainage was an issue. And this is a way for the city to collect a fee to pay for that drainage. So it just seems, Brooke, I'm sorry, you still got your hand up.
Yeah. You know, I think we need to flesh this out before we adopted as a policy.
I agree.
In my view. And, you know, it also combines with impervious cover. I'm not sure if my first impression is it seems like, well, you can buy whatever impervious cover you want. But
well, this would not affect right now, we don't have an impervious cover ordinance on residential construction. And, you know, so this doesn't have anything to do with that part of it. And I didn't read anything in the responses we got that say that people really want that. But this is a way for us to pay for that new construction pays for some of the drainage issues that we have identified in our survey that we want to pay for. It's just and Brooke, just so everybody here knows, the $5 to $7. When I was talking to Sean, he said, "Well, how much should it be?" And I just said, "Okay, let's start at $5 to $7. It could be 3, it could be 10, but this is impervious cover. This is a discussion item. It wasn't a proposal that I gave on that. So, but it is something that costs us as citizens money when these go up. And I think that the city should not have to pay for that. And so if we can figure out a reasonable way to do that, and we don't have to put numbers in here from what I'm looking at. If we said we would like to have a fee that would be based on the effect, make sure the city doesn't have to pay for additional drainage from new construction. That's really my intent.
The concern I have about it is we don't know if the fee will cover the cost, number one. I mean, I'm not necessarily, if the thought is that this fee is going to cover the cost of whatever drainage problems are created by the new construction, I don't know that we know that. And I wouldn't want it to be that we're going to do this fee and not do something else that might be a better solution to the problem. That's my concern. This fee might not fit. It might not take care of the problem, and it might be used as a way to preclude looking at the problem more globally and figuring out what's actually going to work. That's my concern.
Well, let's I think we're on basically the same page. We want new construction to pay for the problems that they potentially create. And that was the intent of this, my stab at it. If we need to expand it to read, or, you know, and then put some other caveats, I don't have a problem with that. This was not I put this in there more as a discussion item than a proposal, because I think there is I think we need to have some type of stronger fee structure to pay for the drainage that we're going to have to pay for on there. So it just seems to me that this is a way to do it, to calculate it. I don't want to make it so hard on the city. Now, this was this is a little bit different. It's not based on the size of the house. It's based on the size of impervious cover that would incur on that.
Right. Well,
so it's going to be a lot of, I mean, this is a big fee even at $5, because if we're looking at most of the houses in Rollingwood to be, the new houses anyway are probably averaging about 5,000 feet. And you'd have at least another couple thousand feet. So maybe 7,000 feet of impervious cover. So it'd be 35,000 per a fee on that. I mean, it'd be a fairly sizable fee to do it, but drainage.
Tom, if I may, I mean, Amber may want to weigh in on this too, but typically you would not see a fee in a comprehensive plan policy document. You might see something like the city should consider a rate study that would cover the potential costs of any drainage infrastructure.
Yeah, and I put this in here, Sean, just as a, you may recall when you were asking me how much did I put in there, I went, well, let's just start with this. I think that's exactly right. This was to start a discussion on this. Not, I don't know whether it should be $1 or $7 or $10, but that's something that I think should happen. And I agree with you. We don't have to put the amount in there, but the concept is that development should pay for it. New development should pay for itself, and that in the drainage portion of this. So that was really my intent of doing that. I put the numbers in there, and I almost, if you remember our conversation on that, I almost didn't put the numbers, but I thought, well, we'll start, put them in there to start with anyway.
Well, Tom, one more point, if I could. It seems to me that the concept of new construction paying for a fee for a drainage problem that, so to speak, they create, is really saying we're going to let this drainage happen in a way that's going to cost the city, but we're going to ask this resident to pay for it. And it seems to me the better way to handle it is to write a broader policy that says drainage is a problem. Here's what we see happening. Here's some ways to address it. We really think it needs to be addressed and addressed promptly. That would be more what I would be comfortable with than putting a concept of a fee out front, because I just don't know, based on what we know today, if that'll work.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, because if you took two properties, and I think Sean's saying the same thing, just as a policy issue, we put in there, we want new housing development to pay for itself and not create additional burden on the rest of the taxpayers of Rollingwood. I mean, that's the basic concept that I'm going by. And well, so
one way that is not to let the water leave the property.
Yeah, and I on that,
or to deal with it before it leaves the property, which is the.
Yeah, well, this doesn't, now remember what I was talking about here didn't have anything to do with messing with our current ordinances. This is an addition to our current drainage criteria manual. So, you have to still do everything you're doing. This would be an additional fee to handle potential waters downstream. But I think Sean is correct, is I think we're all on the same page with that. I'm on the same page with you, Brooke, on that we want these to pay for themselves and not create an additional problem. Try to retain the problem on site.
Right. And if the concept is that the impervious cover is creating the problem, which I would agree with, you've got a fairness issue in terms of rate making if you just ask those who come along after to cover a fee for the problem and not everyone.
Yeah.
I could have built a driveway or expanded my driveway twice next week. I don't pay the fee, but my neighbor who does that next year will pay the fee.
Yeah.
That's from a rate making standpoint, I think you have a fairness problem with just, if the fee's really not tied to the problem, you've got a fairness issue there, I think.
Tom?
Yes, sir.
It seems to me that until the city has some concept of how to solve the problem and therefore could put some sort of a price on it, I agree with her. This is just kind of saying, well, you got here late, so you're going to pay a fee. I mean, I'm not a builder in Rollingwood, but just outsider looking at it, if the city had that, we're going to need to raise $100 million, $50 million to cure our drainage problem, then everybody pays their fair cost. And those who add new drainage to it, new runoff, they're going to have an additional cost. It just, without a number, it seems to me any fee is almost undefendable.
Yeah, I put these in there and I just pulled them out of the air, and it was for discussion only. It wasn't something that I was, I have any basis to choose on that. Sean, I think your point is just make it a general deal that says the city should consider, we want to make sure that new construction pays for itself and does not create they fix their own drainage problem and they pay a fee. That's really what I would like it to be.
And I should have told you guys, I'm actually doing editing track changes as we go along. So this next version that'll go out, you'll see the new suggestions as well as any changes.
Okay, great. David, I'm sorry, you raised your hand, and my eyesight without my glasses on, I have two choices. I can get back far enough that I can't see who's doing what, or I have to get close. So
yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, I see what you're trying to do, but I'm worried we're getting a little too far into the weeds with this sort of thing. You know, and I'll add something that Brooke pointed out that, you know, I tend to agree with. You know, when you look at the way other cities do drainage fees, it typically applies. There's a drainage fee typically attached to either your water bill, or some other utility bill, that is basically drainage fees calculated based on your amount of impervious cover on your property, and that drainage fee is usually assessed on a monthly basis in your utility bill, and it kind of gets to what Brooke is saying about, you know, kind of, you know, weighting drainage issues towards kind of what's going on as a static. But, you know, I would say that I think that's maybe one that is kind of, since it's a current and ongoing situation, may be a better issue. And also, since it falls under kind of drainage and utilities, a better issue for city council to sort through than us, perhaps.
Right. I want to just mention I'd like to have some mention of our concept in there, but I won't go into details because I think that needs to be threshed out quite a bit.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Sean, if you, Brooke, do you have a question, or did I just get your name? Oh, good. Sean, if you'll carry on, I apologize for making that.
That's good discussion.
Yes, it was.
No problem. So still on residential, the next one is traffic is an issue in residential areas. One of the biggest concerns among residents. Traffic study should be done. Crosswalks and pedestrian refuge islands should be considered based on outcomes of traffic study. And these are desired by a large portion of residents, and many want to expand the size.
Okay. 2 and 3 together. Okay. Let's just kind of go through these fairly quickly, Sean, if you don't mind.
Okay. All right. And then next is while many but not majority want a limitation on home size, all wanted side setbacks to remain. Next, while there is no consensus on estate lots, most residents would like to see the city curtail the development of estate lots.
Yes.
And then residents wanted to protect trees and ensure that Rolling would maintain a healthy tree canopy throughout the city. Do not allow short-term rentals, and then consider applying the same setbacks to properties that abut City of Austin or Westlake Hills as it would be applied throughout Rollingwood. I'll pause there. That's the end of the residential policies.
Okay. Number 8, I think we had a couple of discussions on that as regard the rear setbacks that we have if you abut the City of Austin. And there was a question of what, in my mind, that's something that needs to be looked at that needs to be looked at fairly closely by the city. God dog it. Sorry, I had something pop up that I did not bring up. Anyway, the city is let's see if I can get rid of this darn thing that showed up on my computer. Sheesh.
Tom, while you're trying to do that, Brooke has her hand up.
Well,
Brooke,
let's
I'm
look.
sorry.
I
Okay.
don't. Tom was finished, so.
No, I can't get it. God knows what that's going to happen to me. Okay. There we go. Brooke, I'm sorry.
Okay, but my question on 8, I think our discussion was limited on the rear setback.
That's correct. And that should be just the rear setback.
Should I add in rear then? Right, the same rear setback?
Yes, because that we really don't have any. We have one property that is surrounded by the city of Austin, and it's the only one that I'm aware of.
Tom, were you able to look at what I sent you today on that issue?
You know, Brooke.
And I can describe it.
Yeah, you're going to have to. I didn't see it when I was preparing for the meeting.
I looked at the zoning map, and I just followed the outline of the zoning map for properties that abut Austin or Westlake. And there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of, it's not just along Park Hills,
but
no. All along the northern boundary of Rolling Wood. There are lots that butt up to lots off of Stratford. There are coves where some of the lots in a cul-de-sac abut another property. There's property along Vale that abuts the city park. I'm not quite sure what happens in Tremont because the zoning map doesn't show the Tremont residential area. There are lots along Gentry, part of a block of Gentry that abuts city of Austin. And I just don't know if we don't swallow up the rule, so to speak, if we were to adopt that measure for property that abut Westlake or Austin.
I think that the other option is right now, at least 1 or 2 people that have asked for variances have received those from the Board of Adjustment. And I'm almost thinking that we leave it as is and let that come about that way, or make a recommendation that the city start looking at this a little bit to make this equitable. But I agree. I looked at this. We had a couple of comments last time that goes, okay, now this is going to jump. If I do that, I happen to live on Park Hills, and I do that, my neighbor across the street who is not abutting there is going to go, why shouldn't I be able to do that too? Okay. So I think we may leave this up to the Board of Adjustment to decide on an individual case that comes in on that. But I did want to at least bring that up because that's something that is, from a fairness standpoint, should be there to do it. And, you know, we could go into a lot of different what ifs on that, but I think that I just don't see how you wouldn't jump the street on a general policy. You'd have to have the Board of Adjustment.
And the other concern I had when I looked at it is if that 10 foot on the rear, for how many of these lots that's going to be in the public utility easement anyway, and do you really want a house abutting that closely to the utility easement? But
well, I have in my backyard, I have actually a structure that is built. It's partly in the city of Westlake Hills and partly in the city of Austin. It is actually built on the property line. It's built in the easement back there, but it's built. So, you know, that happens, and that's no big deal. I'll live with it. So I think that I'm okay with just, it was something that I'd been asked about and looked at. So I think right now, Brooke, we might be better off and Ryan, I see you, Ryan's here, and Ryan made a good comment last time. If I did that, it would jump across the street and somebody would ask for the same thing. So I'm willing to let's leave that for right now. Okay. Ryan, you got your hand up?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm late. I had to deal with some personal things. I wanted to ask on number 3 on the page that I have, it just says are desired by a large portion, and it doesn't have a noun there.
Yeah, I think that was I copied and pasted from some information that Tom sent, and I've actually added that to the previous bullet. So it's that crosswalks and pedestrians. It still doesn't read that well, though. I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, if I missed it. There may have been a word or something missing, but it reads now crosswalks and pedestrian refuge islands should be considered based on outcomes of traffic study and are desired by a large portion of residents and may want to expand the size. Did I get that correctly? It's kind of a run-on sentence there.
Well, I tend to do that sometimes.
We can work with the language. One issue that I just wanted to mention is that there was consensus for a crosswalk across Rollingwood Drive near the park, and I think that should be specifically pointed out rather than we don't need a traffic study to know that people want a crosswalk crossing Rollingwood Drive near the park.
Yeah, there are some there's some ADA issues with crosswalks that the city will have to deal with. I think you can do it, but I think they have to. It's not a lay down type of thing. You have to address a couple of issues that come about.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd have to have cutouts and well, to the extent there needed to be cutouts, but I don't think that would affect our need to recommend it based on what the survey clearly says.
That was the intent. Yeah. So and I think you brought it up, Ryan, last time, and I should have included that. I didn't, but I will make sure that that's in the next draft we have on that.
So Ryan, if I may suggest a friendly amendment, we talked about the mobility chapter maybe before you got on, and what you just described, I added that to the mobility chapter versus the future land use, because it specifically calls out in the mobility chapter, pedestrian improvements over certain walkways. Is that?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry, I just missed that part.
No problem. No problem. Okay.
All right. Okay. Let's see, Sean. Let's continue.
Can I add one more thing on estate lots too? I don't know, and again, I apologize if I'm missing it. That's on me. But my recollection from the general survey was that, and from talking to people, is that the biggest concern about estate lots is it changes where the sides are, and you could potentially have a backyard that abuts a street. And so I think that's what very early on that was brought up on the strike force meetings, was that one of the biggest issues is that you could have 4 houses in a row where the front is, let's say, on Park Hills, and then you could have a 5th house on the same block where that's actually the back of the house because of an estate lot. If two lots were combined and they're on different streets, and then the next house over could be the front of the house. I don't know how to communicate that there, but that seems to be the biggest concern I've heard from people. Oh, and then also the use of a state-like concept to break all the rules with respect to how big a house can be on the lot. And, actually Amber and Ashley probably have better ideas than I do on this, but I don't know if that can be in there somehow or if that needs to be in here somehow, but those were the concerns that I had heard from people regarding estate lots. Am I missing that, Amber, or is that right?
Yeah, you're right. I think the Planning and Zoning Commission has tried to take a run at this a couple of times and can't really, they talk about things and don't finish this project up. But yeah, that's the concern, that you would have a backyard fence right up against somebody's front yard. Fortunately, we haven't seen this be too much of a problem for the city, because it tends to be if a property owner has more than one lot, a lot by itself has more rights as far as accessory buildings. And so they are incentivized to keep the property separate and treat it as a regular residential lot. So that way, if they want to build like a gym, they can build a gym that basically meets the residential requirements, and then they could have a pool cabana in the backyard as their accessory dwelling. So that's kind of what we've seen. We haven't seen too many people we haven't seen anybody make a request for a through and through lot, but that's something that Planning and Zoning has been working on for quite a while.
So maybe we could say on number 5, just add something like, and minimize any negative impact on adjacent neighbors or something like that, just so that we're on record that we don't have some huge objection to them in theory, but that to the extent they're negatively impacting others, that's where we would fall.
Let me add one thing on that. I agree with everything. Emergency vehicles, that creates a nightmare for emergency vehicles when they don't really know, when they're trying to get to an address for any reason. If it's not a consistent housing on streets, it could create a problem on that. So I would just like to mention on there too that for emergency vehicles, that they work on having a consistent addressing system so that people can they can find them in case of an emergency on that. I'll have to work on that wording. That was terrible, but that's it. Brooke?
When I read this number 5, I went back to look at the survey because I couldn't remember exactly what the survey results were. And I would suggest that we reflect here a little more closely what the survey, when I looked at the survey, the question on the survey where opinion was mixed was whether the city should prohibit estate lots.
Yeah.
And then there was more than a majority want the city to regulate setbacks and other issues associated with estate lots. And I think that's kind of where the comments are coming from today, where, it's really, from all the input we're getting, this is another issue that needs more attention.
I agree with what Brooke said. If we could just align it to the responses, that meets my concern.
Right.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that because I guess the original question was whether we banned them or not, or we wanted to encourage them. And that's the deal is if they meet the criteria, fine. That's what it.
And if the criteria are appropriate, we need help finding the appropriate criteria.
Right. I agree on that. Okay. Sean, continue. We'll go through this real quick.
All right. We ready to move on to commercial?
Yes.
Okay. So the commercial, there were 3 kind of bullets on the top, the first 3 points were points that Tom shared with me, and then I believe the remainder of it is kind of directly from Brooke, your memo you sent. But so we had talked at one point about not actually changing the future land use plan in terms of any colors, but instead that first one says allow all commercially zoned property along Bee Cave Road to become retail, including restaurants. Note, this is what Rolling Wood citizens have requested as a use, but do not recommend any changes to owners' usage.
I don't know what that last part means.
Yeah, that sounds a little odd at the end too. I thought the same thing. It's basically saying, I think what Tom was trying to say is, this is what Rolling Citizens would like, but at this time, we're not recommending full-scale change from office to retail. It's sort of at the owner's discretion.
Yeah, I think I had the owner's current usage is what I had. I don't know how that didn't get.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think that, and I thought we had kind of voted on this already, that we were perfectly fine with allowing retail or office on virtually any lot in the commercial zone. Restaurants, I think that we have to be a little more careful on because they have the possibility of negatively impacting adjacent homeowners. So I wouldn't personally be in favor of listing everything for a restaurant use, but certainly would be fine with putting in something that said that, that the city should search for opportunities for restaurant uses or should encourage restaurant uses, something like that. I'm not sure, but what we voted on was that we were fine with virtually every lot, commercial areas being retail or office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So do we need to, let's how am I going to word the restaurants?
This is what I just wrote based on what Ryan says. Allow all commercially zoned property along Bee Cave Road to be office or retail. And then in parentheses, the city should consider encouraging restaurant uses.
Yeah, maybe where, what's the right word? Where appropriate, or I don't know.
You would want to say, consistent with, no, we don't have that.
Tom, you've mentioned the lot in the Endeavor complex. I forget what, maybe it's a bank now or something like that you've said would be a perfect restaurant. I mean, that's just kind of the idea that I had, that there are probably some opportunities for some good restaurant lots, but I wouldn't want them everywhere.
So,
okay. Where restaurant use would not adversely impact adjacent residential areas.
That works for me.
Well, that's, and we have had, as Brooke, I think you probably remember, we've had restaurants that have created Ryan, it may still create for you some issues of exhaust smells that come from restaurants along Bee Cave Road.
Yeah, we smell Chinese food on, every week or two, but we don't mind it. We moved here after they did, so I can't really complain about that.
Okay. Sean, can you change it to that? Do you have enough to make that work?
Yep, I did.
Good.
Hey,
okay.
Tom, one comment real quick. I think, I think there is technology right now for restaurants for exhausts and scrubbers and things like that will virtually eliminate the smell. And so, one of my questions is, it was my thought, and I haven't looked at it for a while, but restaurant use was included in our zoning category of retail.
Yes.
And so, I'm worried a little bit here that we're kind of creating a different zoning category and kind of, parsing out restaurants separately and kind of potentially mucking with our zoning ordinances a little bit in a way that maybe we shouldn't.
Well, restaurants require a special use permit from the city.
Do they? Okay.
Yes, regardless, because they have, if they have a liquor license and
well, sure, yeah,
deals like that. So they require a little bit different on that, David.
But that's a special use permit as opposed to zoning. And I wanted to be a little bit careful about that. You know, I hear the you know, the concern with regard, you know, basically odors, et cetera, but I think that, you know, particularly if they're required to have a special use permit, et cetera, the technology, particularly for newer restaurants, is out there to ameliorate a lot of that, so long as it's not a barbecue restaurant with a, you know, big smokehouse out back.
Great. All right, Sean, I think you've got enough to work with there.
Okay. All right, the next one is connect parking areas of or on different lots where possible, so as to reduce the number of ingress, egress on Bee Cave Road and improve overall mobility. And then hotels deserve special consideration related to this issue.
And that is the reason that I said that is with it just that's been a goal of the city for a long time, is to try to have as many to reduce the access points on Bee Caves Road so you can control traffic a little bit better on that. Possible hotels, and it is possible hotels, because they're going to have a special zoning themselves and go through a whole process to get there for that, Sean. And I'd like for that to be noted in there too, if you don't mind. Okay.
All right. Next one is create more opportunities for residents to walk, bike, utilize golf carts to retail restaurants on Bee Cave Road.
Yes.
And then beginning at 4 on, these are directly copy and pasted from Brooks' memo, which I believe you guys have gone through before, but happy to kind of go through these again. It's up to you.
I think we've done them. Does anybody have let me just ask this to facilitate that. Does anybody have a question on item number 4? I think we've gone through it all. Wally, does this address the points you were making?
I think so.
Good.
Tom?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think you know, 4 is what we addressed after we talked about the commercial setbacks, and I don't think 1 through 3 address back and side setbacks or height limitations.
Okay, so okay, and height.
Yeah, height. we need to get back in all of those things we voted on at the long meeting that we had with about 30 votes.
Yes. And I'll make sure, Sean, that you get those and put those in this document also.
Yeah, sure. Who wants to send those to me? I'll add those in as soon as I get that.
I'll get with Ashley tomorrow and we'll send it to you.
Okay. And Brooke, just so I understand what you're saying there, you're saying that these elements you guys just discussed and that Ryan said y'all voted on, that would be right before item 4?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Okay. All right.
On item 3, this again, you may have already, you probably already dealt with this on the mobility section, but we had talked about and voted on, this is part of what we talked about, was the specific recommendation to make a walking path along Edgegrove. Did that go into the other section?
No, I think it's okay to specifically call it out. Okay. And then I also wanted to just mention, Ryan, like what we do have in the mobility section right now. So there's 5 items. Conduct a traffic study with an eye towards creating safe accessibility from the residential areas of Rollingwood to commercial areas along Bee Cave Road, specifically along Delana Lane, Rollingwood Drive, and Edgegrove Drive, and at the crossings of these 2 roadways over Bee Cave Road. And then consider creating pedestrian refuge islands and crosswalks at or near Bee Cave Road at the intersections of Rollingwood and Edgegrove. This requires additional study. And then 3, consider adopting a policy allowing usage of golf cart type vehicles on residential roads and up to commercial areas at Bee Cave Road. And 4, encourage sidewalks on rear of commercial development for additional bike and pedestrian usage. And then 5, add a crosswalk over Rollingwood Drive next to Rollingwood Park.
Okay, I agree with all of those. I didn't hear Edgegrove in that, or maybe.
No, yeah, you're right. I'll add to that.
So we had voted on, and I think it was David. Yeah. David, so please clarify if I'm getting it wrong. I thought it was your motion at the time, but it was something like I feel like you said it needed to say the words hike and bike trail, but I don't remember. I could be wrong about that. Along Edgegrove from Drive to Bee Caves Road.
You know, I think, because I think we were calling it a trail, and I think I said, and basically an improved hike and bike path. So I mean, so to get the sense that it's, you know, we're not talking about kind of we're talking about something that's actually paved and designed more like a sidewalk and less like a decomposed granite trail in the woods.
Gotcha.
Agreed. So an improved hike and bike trail along Edgegrove from Rollingwood Drive to Bee Caves Road.
Yeah, and actually, Ryan, I probably call it a hike and bike path.
That's even better.
Yeah.
Let me, Amber, we talked about this, but I know that at least on part of Edgegrove that goes from Rollingwood Drive to Bee Caves Road, the city has a right-of-way already. It's a lot wider. Our right-of-way is a lot wider than Edgegrove Drive.
It is, yeah. It goes, you know, it was kind of strange. We saw that it goes, you know, past the property line, which doesn't happen for a lot of lots. So we believe that it was contemplated for there to be sidewalks placed there.
And if I remember right, it's like 20 feet, isn't it?
It's significant. I could find that out real quick.
While we're waiting, I have one point on number 2. Well, a couple of ideas on 2. First of all, I would take out the hotel reference for now because I don't remember us recommending hotels anywhere, and that's just going to make a lot of people mad for no reason if we're not recommending them somewhere. On the same thing, I think, and maybe this is already there, but the main thing that we wanted to communicate is to eliminate the requirement of a driveway on every lot.
Yeah.
And maybe we should just say it that directly.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it. I had, for whatever reason, it didn't get there, but I had possible hotels deserve special consideration related to this issue. But I don't mind just taking those out. And if the city's code allows that, they can put that in there. We didn't have enough data that we got back that said people wanted hotels. That's the way I read our survey results on that. So kind of go with that. Amber, did you ever find that, I think it's 20 feet, but it may be a little less.
I pulled the wrong file, but for instance, there's a property on Timberline at Peak Road, and on the Timberline, there's 15 feet of right of way that we've got, and then on the Peak side, there's 10 feet.
Okay.
So there, you might be remembering correctly. I'll see if I can still find something.
Okay. It's sufficient for what we wanted on the path for that anyway.
Yes, that would be sufficient.
To make that happen.
I mentioned that, by the way, to a council member, and the council member thought it was generally a good idea. Also mentioned that some of the persons who live there may have already improved the area where the easement is, and therefore may object to that. And so we just need to be prepared that there might be individual objections.
Okay.
All right, I think that's it. You know, I just made a note. I'll add in that section that'll go above item 4. And any other comments? All right.
Thank you, Sean.
Yes, welcome.
Let's see. Excuse me, let me catch up here.
On residential, I don't know if we've talked about this, but it seems to me that we should be in the business of promoting xeriscape lots, if at all possible. And I don't know if our code currently prohibits them at all. Amber, do you know if there are any requirements on that?
We don't have a landscaping ordinance currently.
We don't have one.
We do have one for the commercial area, but not for residential.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to now, they could just go all at it and make it all rocks if they wanted to.
They could.
Okay, good. Maybe we don't need to get involved then.
We do have some houses that that's exactly what's happened. Not very many, but we do have some. Any other action or consideration we're going to do on single family residential? Okay, don't hear any. Let me, we had, let's see. Ashley, I've got you on here. What did Bowie give us a timeline as to getting the rest of that data that we had asked them to look at back to us?
They did. They think they should have that done by Wednesday of this week. So we should be ready to get that sent out ahead of the meeting and have that next week.
And do you know what they're going to send us?
They were looking at the last 2 chapters that we had in last week's packet, I believe. Okay. And the summary, I guess, or something of the survey results as they pertain to residential.
Okay. All right. Anything else anybody wants to discuss on item number 4, discussion possible action on single family and residential? Ryan, how do you want us to proceed with your xeriscape thought?
I guess it's not needed. I mean, if there's nothing prohibiting it now, it's probably not needed.
We have a couple like that, and they've been, but I don't think we have a lot on that does it. So we'll just leave it on that. Any other issues that we want to bring up while I've got everybody here?
Would there be any desire to include something to encourage xeriscaping?
I'm not sure how the city would do that other than just say, we're not going to give you we already have a fairly progressive water rate structure on that. And that would be, that in effect gives you an incentive to do it.
That totally makes sense.
I was going to say that's the economic incentive right there.
Yeah, that's the only one that I know of. Now, commercial properties have a little bit different rate structure that comes in on that. And that's a little bit different deal that they can get there on that. So I would kind of suggest that you know, I'm not an expert on landscaping. In fact, I'm been told that I'm just god awful at it. I can cut grass, I can dig a hole, but that's the extent of my artistic ability with landscaping, apparently.
Is that your...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, is that the extent of your leash?
Yeah, pretty much. I get to do that. I don't get to pick anything on that.
Okay.
So, and it's probably good. You know, God knows what it would look like. I would tell you that the from a commercial standpoint that we have encouraging, because of the rate structure that we have on commercial properties for water rates as opposed to residential properties, that could have an effect if we encourage that type of thing, zero-scaping on that.
Perhaps we could just do something like we did on the Dark Skies initiative, where we just kind of embraced a policy for the city to consider mechanisms to reduce water throughout residential and commercial areas, and just leave it at that.
I like that, Ryan.
Along that line, does the current code prohibit use of the silos, rainwater retention silos in the residential areas?
No, we don't have there are some
limit that.
So, you know, what I wrote, actually, as you guys have been talking, I just put this up in the general policies. So a third one that just reads, consider adopting water-wise policies for landscaping in residential and commercial areas.
Works for me.
I like.
And let's see, Sean, you sent me something.
Oh, no, I just shot you and Ashley an email just saying, let me know what kind of coordination you want us to have with Bowie this week.
Great. Okay. And I had, to be very honest, we thought we were going to have our, Bowie would have their part done today, and apparently there was a little miscommunication. So they did not have that, but they'll have it for us Wednesday. So we'll start with that. Okay, item number 5, discussion possible action regarding future meeting dates and topics for the comprehensive plan. Obviously, I'd like to meet next Monday if we could. And do we have anything that anybody would like to put on there that rather than just continue what we've been doing?
I'm going to be gone. I'll be out.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm gonna get with Amber and Ashley and send out the agenda early. And if anybody would like to make a change, please let me know, and we'll be glad to add or put anything on there that anybody would like on that.
Tom, may I ask a question? So the only other chapters, you know, there's the implementation chapter, which kind of, you know, as you described earlier, is kind of a matrix of pulling all the major policies together. But the other chapter is the one, and I forget if you guys made a decision on that or not, is sort of the economic development and finance chapter. I think there was some discussion about that, and I know some of the work that Brooke and one of her colleagues did, you wanted to have in that chapter. But I just want to get some clarity on that just for scheduling.
Can you have a draft of that by next Monday?
I need some guidance on that for sure. So maybe you and I can talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be available.
That might be something Brooke could help with too, since she put that document together and did all the thinking on that with Phil, I think.
Yeah, I will. Let me do this. I'm gonna be probably traveling tomorrow. I hope I get a clean bill of health and can come back to Rollingwood. So why don't we do this? I'm gonna probably set this up for Wednesday. Brooke, are you gonna be available Wednesday at a time?
I'm available Wednesday morning. I'm not available Wednesday afternoon, and then I'm from Wednesday afternoon until September 2, I'm out.
Okay.
I'm available before 10 a.m. on Wednesday.
All right. Let's just set this up for 9 o'clock on Wednesday, and we'll try to get together with the three of us on and Ashley.
Sounds good.
To do that, if you don't mind. Okay. Do we have anybody that would like to address the strike force for an item not on the agenda? I don't see any hands up. All righty. Very good. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second. I also have a question for after we adjourn, but not being in the way of adjourning.
Okay. All right. So if you oppose adjourning, just let me know, but I don't see any hands up. So we are adjourned. Okay.
My question, if Amber and Ashley know, do we have a set of candidates?
We do. We have Amy Patillo, Emily Doran. Sorry, I'm going off memory. Actually, just sent an email. Who's our slated candidates? Emily Doran, Amy Patillo, Alec Robinson, Chris Braden, Brooke Brown.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
There's 6.
Thank you, Brooke, for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, Phil McDuffie. Phil McDuffie is the other one. 6 of them.
And we have 3 slots, right?
We have 3 slots. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Ryan, for bringing that up. And it's closed now, isn't it?
It closed at 5 o'clock.
There you go.
There's your slate.
Yeah, that's it.
Very good.
Wally, did I cover your question? I hope I did. I forgot to go back on you with that.
Oh, that my concern was it just was ignored. It just it disappeared.
Yeah, but it's there now. There you go. Good. Well, listen, thank y'all very much. And hopefully I can, I'll get an okay either tonight or tomorrow morning that I can actually come back to Rollingwood. We had a lot of our people we were around, relatives, kids that tested positive for coronavirus, and we did not want to spread it in Rollingwood. So we wanted to make sure that we went through our incubation period and could stay here until we got it all taken care of. So that's what Sandra and I are doing. So
we'll cross our fingers for you, Tom, through the next few days.
I drank whiskey and smoked a cigar, so it probably kills off every virus there is. It's a little known fact, but it pretty much kills them all. So hopefully it does on this too. So
okay.
So we're scheduled to get back because we have other work to do, but I'm catching a lot of grief for doing that, but I didn't feel like it'd be prudent to hang around with anybody that, so we just isolated ourselves for a couple of days here. So very good. Well, thank y'all very much. I appreciate it.
You
bet.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.